In the heart of the Ivory Coast, the village of Manzari came alive under the golden embrace of the setting sun. It was the eve of the Festival of Spirits, a time when the air buzzed with the ancient rhythms of drums and the village swirled in a kaleidoscope of colors. Adjoa, a spirited girl with eyes like polished mahogany, weaved through the crowd, her heart dancing to the rhythm of the festival. As the night unfolded, the village square became a canvas of cultural splendor. Dancers adorned in vibrant cloths spun stories with their bodies, while the air was perfumed with the scent of spiced kebabs and sweet tamarind. The festival, a bridge between the living and the ancestral spirits, was a spectacle of joy and reverence. Awa's gaze was drawn to a group of elders, their faces etched with the wisdom of years, recounting tales of spirits and gods. Among them sat her grandmother, Mama Adjoa, a figure of respect in Manzari. Her stories of spirits were not just tales, but threads woven into the fabric of their history. Intrigued by the mystique of the festival, Awa wandered away from the jubilation, her curiosity guiding her to Mama Adjoa's hut. There, amidst the relics of the past, her eyes landed on an object that seemed out of place. An ancient mask, its features bold yet foreboding, carved from dark wood and adorned with strange symbols. Despite the mask's ominous aura, Awa was captivated. Its presence was magnetic, almost calling out to her. As her fingers traced the intricate carvings, a shiver ran down her spine. The air around her seemed to thicken, charged with an unseen energy. "Abiwa!" Mama Adjoa's voice, stern and laced with concern, broke the spell. "That mask is not for play. It belongs to the spirits." Adjoa turned to find her grandmother standing at the doorway, her eyes reflecting a mix of fear and warning. "It's cursed," Mama Adjoa whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant drum beats. "It once belonged to a spirit who walked both in the land of the living and the dead. Wearing it comes with a price too heavy for the soul." Awa, her curiosity piqued, felt a mix of fear and fascination. She nodded, concealing her growing obsession with the mask. As the night deepened, the festival reached its zenith. The drum beats grew more insistent, echoing the heartbeat of Manzari itself. Awa found herself drawn back to the mask. In a moment of reckless desire, she slipped away from the celebration, her mind fixated on the forbidden artifact. In the quiet of the hut, Adjoa hesitantly lifted the mask. Her heart pounded in her chest as she slowly brought it to her face, the warnings of her grandmother echoing in her mind. The moment the mask touched her skin, the air around her stilled, as if the very essence of the night was holding its breath. Adjoa looked out through the eyes of the mask, and the world before her transformed. Shadows seemed to dance at the edge of her vision, and the distant music warped into a haunting melody. A feeling of power surged through her, intoxicating yet terrifying. Outside, the festival continued, unaware of the ancient forces stirring in its midst. But in the hut, under the gaze of the mask, Awa stood at the precipice of a world unseen, teetering between the realm of her ancestors and the unknown mysteries of the spirits. As she gazed into the darkness, a whisper, ancient and seductive, filled her mind. "Awa, welcome to the path of the spirits." The night had only just begun. In the days following the Festival of Spirits, a shadow fell over Manzari. The village, once vibrant with life and color, now harbored an air of disquiet. Awa, the girl who had dared to don the ancient mask, found herself at the heart of this unsettling change. The morning after the festival, Awa awoke feeling different. Her dreams had been a whirlwind of shadowy figures and cryptic symbols. As she moved through the village, the world seemed altered. Colors were duller, sounds were muffled, and she felt an unnerving sense of being watched. In the marketplace, animals shied away from her, their eyes filled with a primal fear. The villagers too began to notice. Whispers followed her like autumn leaves in the wind. Awa's once friendly demeanor was now overshadowed by a mysterious aura. Kofi, Awa's best friend since childhood, was the first to confront her. "You've changed, Awa," he said, his voice tinged with concern. "Ever since the festival night, you've been different." Adjoa wanted to confide in Kofi, to share the burden of the mask's secret, but fear held her tongue. The mask had become her secret, a forbidden connection to a world she barely understood. That night, as she lay in bed, the mask called to her. Its whispers were irresistible, a siren song that pulled her into its grasp. Once again she placed it over her face, and the transformation was immediate. Her room faded away, replaced by a realm of shadows and whispers. Visions flashed before her eyes, scenes of ancient rituals, spirits walking among the living, and a darkness that crept over the land like a suffocating blanket. The spirit of the mask revealed itself to her, a form both terrifying and alluring. "You are bound to me now, child," it hissed. "Together we will unleash the forgotten powers of the spirit world." Adwoa felt a surge of energy course through her veins, but it was not her own. It was ancient, primal, and utterly consuming. She was no longer just Adwoa. She was a vessel for something far older and more powerful. The next day, a sense of dread hung over Manzari. Unexplained events began to occur. Crops withered overnight. A mysterious illness spread among the livestock, and shadows seemed to move on their own accord. The villagers whispered of a curse, their eyes casting furtive glances towards Adwoa. As the days passed, Awa's transformation deepened. She started to withdraw from her friends and family, spending hours alone, communing with the mask. Her once warm smile was now a rare sight, replaced by a distant, haunted expression. Mama Adjoa, sensing the growing darkness in her granddaughter, sought counsel with the village elders. They spoke in hushed tones of ancient curses and the need for a cleansing ritual. But Adwoa was slipping further away, drawn into the mask's embrace. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a chilling incident shook the village. A young boy, playing near the edge of the forest, vanished without a trace. The only clue was a series of strange footprints leading into the heart of the woods, footprints that bore an uncanny resemblance to those of Adwoa. Panic spread through Manzari like wildfire. Adwoa, once beloved by all, was now viewed with suspicion and fear. And as she lay in her bed that night, the mask firmly affixed to her face, she realized the terrifying truth. The spirit of the mask was using her to manifest its power in the physical world. The village of Manzari, once a place of harmony and joy, now stood on the brink of an abyss with Adwoa at its center. The mask's curse was only beginning to reveal its true horror, and Adwoa was helplessly entangled in its dark web. In the once tranquil village of Manzari, an air of unease had settled like a thick fog. The heart of this change was Adwoa, the girl who had donned the ancient mask, now a vessel for a power she could neither comprehend nor control. Each day, Awa's transformation grew more profound. Her once bright, playful demeanor was replaced by a distant, almost ghostly presence. She moved with a grace that seemed unnatural, her eyes reflecting a depth of ancient knowledge far beyond her years. The villagers, who had once embraced her with warmth, now watched her with a mix of fear and suspicion. At night, Awa's dreams were a cacophony of voices and visions. The spirit of the mask whispered dark secrets and tales of its past wearers, each story a tragic testament to the mask's malevolent influence. These phantoms of history paraded through her mind, their faces twisted in eternal torment. Kofi, witnessing his friend's alarming change, tried to reach out to her, but the Adwoa he knew seemed to be slipping away, replaced by someone or something else. "Adwoa, this isn't you," he pleaded one evening as they sat under the baobab tree, the site of their childhood adventures. But Awa's only response was a cryptic smile that sent shivers down his spine. As the days passed, Awa's connection to the mask deepened. She began to speak in a language forgotten by time, her words echoing with the power of the ancients. Her actions became unpredictable, at times terrifying. One night, under the mask's influence, she danced through the village, her movements casting strange shadows that twisted and writhed like living things. The villagers locked their doors, fear replacing the communal harmony that once defined Manzari. Mama Adjoa, steeped in the old ways, recognized the signs of a spirit's possession. With a heavy heart, she consulted the village's oldest texts, seeking a way to save her granddaughter. The solution she found was fraught with danger, a ritual that could sever the connection between Adwoa and the mask, but at a great cost. Meanwhile, the mask's power manifested in more sinister ways. A local well, once the village's source of life, turned black as night. Animals fled the village, as if sensing an impending doom. And in the darkest hour of the night, a shadow crept into the hut of a villager, leaving behind an unexplained tragedy. The village elders convened, their faces etched with worry. "We must act," one declared, "before the curse of the mask consumes us all." On the eve of the ritual, the village gathered, a sense of solemnity hanging in the air. Awa, adorned with the mask, stood at the center of a circle, the villagers' eyes upon her. Mama Adjoa, her hands trembling, began the incantation, calling upon the spirits of their ancestors for aid. But as the ritual reached its climax, the mask exerted its full control. Awa's body convulsed, and a terrifying power burst forth, disrupting the ritual. The ground shook, the sky darkened, and a scream pierced the night, a sound that was both Awa's and something otherworldly. The villagers fled in terror, leaving Awa alone in the darkness, the mask firmly affixed to her face. As the night reclaimed its silence, the only sound that remained was the haunting echo of the mask's laughter, a chilling reminder that the true horror had only just begun. In the days following the disrupted ritual, a palpable shadow descended over the village of Manzari. The once vibrant community was now gripped by an unspoken terror, a darkness that seeped from the very earth they walked upon. The change was not just in the air, it was in their souls, in the very fabric of their existence. Awa, the epicenter of this transformation, had become a stranger to those who once knew her. Her eyes, once brimming with life and curiosity, now glowed with an otherworldly luminescence. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the weight of centuries, echoing with the ancient tongues of forgotten spirits. The villagers watched her with a mix of fear and pity, helpless in the face of the unseen force that had claimed her. The curse of the mask manifested in terrifying ways. Plants withered, turning to ash at the slightest touch. Animals once docile became erratic and wild, their eyes reflecting a deep-seated fear. At night, the villagers huddled in their homes, whispering prayers as shadows danced along the walls, forming shapes that defied the laws of nature. Kofi, determined to save his friend, ventured into the heart of the forest, seeking answers from the old spirits. But what he found was a realm of confusion, where the whispers of the trees spoke in riddles, and the path forward was shrouded in uncertainty. In the village, Mama Adjoa, her face etched with lines of worry, gathered the elders. They spoke of ancient curses and darker times, of spirits wronged and vengeance sought. They agreed that something must be done, but the path was fraught with peril, a journey that could lead them into the very heart of darkness. One fateful night, as the moon cast a cold, silvery glow over Manzari, a scream shattered the silence. A young mother, frantic with fear, cried out that her child had vanished into the night. The village erupted in chaos as men and women searched desperately, calling out the child's name into the darkness. But it was Awa who found the child, standing at the edge of the forest, her mask glowing with a sinister light. The villagers watched in horror as the child, entranced by the mask, walked towards Awa. Kofi, his heart racing with fear, stepped forward to intervene, but was held back by the unseen force of the curse. Mama Adjoa, realizing the time for action was now, declared that they must confront the spirit within the mask. She called upon the ancestors for strength, her voice rising above the din of the frightened crowd. As Awa turned to face the villagers, the mask's power surged, and a whirlwind of shadows engulfed her. The ground trembled, and the air crackled with energy. In that moment, the true nature of the curse revealed itself, a spirit of vengeance, born from a betrayal long past, seeking to reclaim what was once lost. The village of Manzari stood on the brink of annihilation, its fate intertwined with the girl who had dared to wear the mask of the forgotten. As the night deepened, a chilling realization settled in the hearts of the villagers. The battle for their very souls had just begun. The air in Manzari was thick with anticipation as the villagers gathered, their eyes fixed on the ancient mask that had brought so much terror to their lives. At the center of the crowd stood Awa, her once kind and curious eyes now glazed over with a sinister, otherworldly sheen. Mama Adjoa, with Kofi by her side, stepped forward, holding an ancient relic, a talisman passed down through generations. It was their only hope against the dark spirit that had possessed Awa. The elders began a haunting chant, their voices rising and falling in a rhythm that seemed as old as time itself. The ground beneath their feet vibrated with the power of their words, and the air shimmered with unseen energy. Adjoa, under the mask's influence, began to speak in a voice that was not her own. It told a tale of betrayal and vengeance, of a spirit wronged centuries ago, its rage festering until it found a new host in the mask. The villagers listened, their hearts heavy with the weight of this dark history. As the chant reached its crescendo, Mama Adjoa raised the talisman, its surface glowing with a faint ethereal light. She called out to the ancestors for strength and guidance. Kofi, his eyes filled with tears, whispered a plea to his friend, begging her to fight against the darkness that had consumed her. Suddenly the mask cracked, a spiderweb of fractures spreading across its surface. Adjoa's body convulsed as the spirit within fought for control. The villagers gasped, their hopes mingling with their fears. In a burst of blinding light, the spirit emerged, a wraith-like figure that screamed in anger and pain. The air was filled with the sound of its fury, a sound that threatened to tear the very soul of Manzari apart. Mama Adjoa, with all her might, thrust the talisman forward, and a beam of pure, radiant light enveloped the spirit. It writhed and howled, its form dissipating into the night. As the light faded, Adjoa collapsed, the mask falling from her face, now just a lifeless piece of wood. The villagers rushed to her side, relief flooding their faces as they realized the nightmare was over. Adjoa opened her eyes, her gaze clear for the first time in weeks. The village of Manzari rejoiced, their joy echoing through the night. But as they celebrated their victory, a subtle unease lingered in the air. The mask, though now seemingly inert, still held a faint, ominous glow. Mama Adjoa, her face lined with exhaustion, looked at the mask warily. "Some spirits never truly leave," she murmured, a hint of uncertainty in her voice. She knew, as did Kofi, who glanced at Adjoa with a mixture of joy and apprehension, that their battle with the supernatural might not be over. In the days that followed, Manzari returned to its peaceful ways, but the story of the mask and the spirit it harbored became a part of the village's lore, a tale whispered in hushed tones. And in the heart of the village, the mask lay in a sealed chamber, its surface still faintly glowing, a silent reminder of the darkness that once walked among them, and the fear that it might one day return.